Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Goalie Glove Box. There's no great way to get the first episode awkwardness out of the way, so I'm just going to jump in with a brief introduction on myself, and then we can jump right into it. I'm Coach Dan. I'm the head instructor and founder of Dan Blackmore Goaltending. We're a goalie school that operates primarily in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, and if you're listening to this, there's already a good chance that you've met me somewhere around the rink at some point. Growing up, I was obviously a goalie. I played AAA level hockey mostly around the GTA and a little bit in Aurora, as well as prep hockey back in the day at the Hill Academy when they were located in Vaughan. I started goalie coaching when I was about 16 years old with Franco-Canadian Goalie School, and in 2021 I founded Dan Blackmore Goaltending and have been working in the Kitchener-Waterloo and Southwestern Ontario regions since then. We offer goalie coaching services including team practices, tryout evaluations, video coaching, private lessons, and camps, and we work with dozens of teams and goalies in the area. And so getting started on an informative podcast like this just kind of felt like a natural extension of those more traditional coaching services that we provide. What I want from this podcast is to really just talk about different things relating to the position and the sport of hockey in general. I want this to be a resource for anyone interested in goaltending, whether it's young goalies, goalie parents, other coaches, fans, or people who are just new to hockey and want to know about the most important position in the sport. My topics might be very technically focused. Other times I might be talking more about mindset and preparation, whether that's physical or mental, as well as some news or observations from the major professional leagues such as the NHL, PWHL, and things like that. I wanted to start this off by talking about the opening night of the PWHL season that happened on Friday. As a guy who grew up in Toronto, it was great to see the Scepters get a win in their first game, but I really wanted to focus on the late game that night between the Seattle Torrent and the Vancouver Goldeneyes. This was the inaugural game for both franchises, and they really started off with a bang. It started from before puck drop. They had a really nice opening ceremony. I thought it was a great touch by the Goldeneyes having Christine Sinclair and Megan Augusta, two local heroes, coming out for that opening ceremony. And you could tell that a lot of that fan energy early really translated to the players. The first period was a bit of a barn burner, and there were maybe even some nerves defensively for both teams, as there were quite a lot of rush chances at the start of that game that both goalies had to deal with and make a lot of big saves. I thought Corinne Schroeder was really good at the start of every period. It felt like Seattle was on their heels, and she really had to make a bunch of saves, particularly in that first and second period, and then obviously giving up a goal on the first shot of the third period before she could allow her team to really settle into the game and start getting some chances of their own. On the other side, I thought Maschmeyer was really good as well. She gave up kind of a fluky one late in the third period that put Seattle up 3-2. And there was a bit of a lengthy review as it was initially waved off before being ruled a good goal. And it would be easy there to just lose focus a bit and maybe lose some confidence as well. But Seattle poured it on after going up 3-2, and she made a bunch of big saves in tight to keep her team in the game, and they were eventually able to tie it and send it to overtime, where they obviously got the win. So congrats to everybody involved. It was an awesome opening night for the league and obviously for those two teams. Neither goalie is going to end up with a fantastic save percentage from this game, but I thought, like I said, both goalies had to make some big saves. There were a lot of nerves, a lot of rush chances, a lot of battles in tight. Both goalies did a great job to keep their team in it and keep the game close. It was back and forth. It was an entertaining night of hockey, and obviously congratulations to Vancouver for getting their first win in overtime. Another big news story from the goalie world this past weekend was the Connor Hellebuyck injury. He's out 4 to 6 weeks after having knee surgery, which is obviously a huge blow to the Winnipeg Jets. He won the Vezina Trophy these past 2 seasons. He's the reigning Hart Trophy winner as the league MVP last year. He's also off to a pretty good start this year, as he's among the top 5 in goals saved above expected around the league. He's a real workhorse for the team. He's played in over 60 games over the past 4 seasons with the Jets, which is rare in today's NHL, and that just makes it that much harder to go without him for the next month and a half for that organization. Eric Comrie is a serviceable option for the Jets. He's in his 3rd stint with the organization, so there's already a lot of familiarity with him already. He's off to a decent start this season and was good for them in 20 games last year with 9 wins and a .914 save percentage, but he hasn't played a starting role in his career since the 2018 to 2019 season with the Manitoba Moose. So while the Winnipeg Jets have confidence in him, it's going to be interesting to see how he handles the increased workload versus how much the Jets are going to have to rely on the goalie they just called up in Thomas Milic. Now, Thomas Milic is an interesting option. He's, like Comrie, a little bit undersized at only 6 foot tall. He's a 5th-round draft pick in the 2023 NHL draft and kind of struggled in the AHL in his first couple of seasons. But last year he put up some good numbers in the ECHL, and he's off to a good start in the AHL this year. And with a long-term injury to Hellebuyck, he's definitely going to have to play games for this team unless they can figure something out on the waiver wire, which I'm sure he's a little bit nervous about, but also very excited for the opportunity. But like I said, there's no replacing a guy like Hellebuyck, multiple-time Vezina Trophy winner, league MVP. It's going to be goaltending by committee, I think, moving forward for them, and we obviously wish him a speedy recovery. The injury talk kind of segues into the main topic of today's podcast, which is burnout. I'll talk about what burnout is, what the signs of burnout are, and some strategies to look at how we can prevent and deal with burnout if it occurs. Burnout is defined as a state of emotional, physical, or mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stresses. It's important to note that stresses does not necessarily have to mean something that we dislike or something that we don't like doing. It can arise from things that we love to do, whether it's something in our career, something from our extracurricular activities, school, sports, anything in between. These stresses that cause burnout can come from any number of things, so we really have to be paying attention to the signs of burnout in order to prevent it from happening. If we do get burned out, this can lead to exhaustion, decrease in performance, feeling cynical towards your activity or your work or whatever is causing the burnout. And so again, it's just very, very important that we identify burnout and mitigate it to avoid those negative impacts. At a high level, burnout happens when we don't have adequate time to rest or recover from, in this case, hockey for long periods of time. It's very easy to think about this from a standpoint of physical recovery. If I constantly train with my team, I'm constantly doing extra practices, working out in the gym, using my muscles all the time, playing a bunch of games and not getting any rest in between. Eventually, I'm either going to get seriously hurt or my muscles are going to be too tired for me to play well and perform. But it's also important to think about the mental side of burnout and how the stress from hockey or any number of other external factors can affect how we feel about the sport and how we're playing within it. I really wanted to talk about burnout at this time of year, late November, early December. These are kind of the dog days of the season. We might be thinking about things like the Christmas break. Maybe we're going on a vacation over the holidays. Some of my older goalies might even be thinking about high school or university exams. And so there's a lot of external things that are building up on us at this time of year that could contribute to burnout. It's easy to be excited to get to the rink every day during the early parts of the season. August, September, training camps, school's not really in full swing yet. But once things build up, whether it's team performance, worrying about improving all the time, external pressures like schoolwork, things like that, hockey can easily start to feel like something that is adding to your mental fatigue and adding to your stress rather than a fun activity that you get to do. I really like the cup and water analogy for stress. If you think about your capacity for stress as an empty cup, and everything that adds stress to your life puts a little bit of water into that cup. So schoolwork adds a little bit of water. A bad game adds a little bit of water. Your parents are mad at you, adds a little bit of water. All of those things can start to add up where at some point your cup gets completely full. And if you don't take a break and get some of that stress out of your life, if you try to add more water to that cup, it's going to overflow, and that's when burnout occurs. An important note here is that this stress can be external, so maybe it's parents or coaches encouraging you to continue training even when you're not feeling physically or mentally ready to go to the rink. But it can also be self-imposed, and this is often the one that I see the most, where an athlete feels like they constantly have to be on the ice or I'm not getting better. I have to do this and I have to do that because this player's doing this or this goalie's doing that, and I have to be the best and I've got to be on the ice all the time. And if you tie your entire identity into being on the ice and being a hockey player, rather than having hockey as a part of your life, when things start to go wrong or when things start to get hard in hockey, it's going to start affecting your entire self-image and really start affecting your mental health as a whole. So it's important to recognize the signs of burnout to know when we are doing too much, as this will allow us to get better balance to our life so that we're A, having more fun, and B, maximizing our development and our time when we are on the ice. I'd also say that it's important to not only self-monitor, but to also look out for burnout in your teammates. For coaches and parents that might be listening, you should be monitoring your players and your children as well for some of these signs of burnout, because quite often they're not going to come out to you themselves. They're going to want to push through. I talked about that self-imposed burnout. So in some cases, it's up to the coach and to the parents to recognize, hey, I think these kids are doing a little bit too much, and I think we need some time away from the rink, because if we keep going the way that we're going, we're either going to get hurt or we're going to start losing the passion and losing the love for the game. And that's really going to negatively affect our long-term performance. One of the first signs of burnout is a feeling of staleness or being trapped by hockey. In a general sense, it's a feeling of hockey becoming an obligation and something that we have to do, rather than something that we get to do for fun and for our own improvement and enjoyment. Burnout can often result in a feeling of being overwhelmed physically. We train our muscles and our body hard so that we can be stronger, faster, more flexible, more agile, whatever the case may be. But when we're overtraining and we're never having the time to recover and actually get stronger, we end up just getting weaker and weaker over time, which is obviously counterproductive to what we want to achieve. So if you're noticing that you're feeling sore all the time, not sleeping well, maybe not even being able to do as much as you used to do, whether that's on the ice or in the gym, despite all of the extra training that you're doing, this is a sign of physical burnout and a sign that you really need to cut back on the amount of work that you're doing, give your body the chance to rest and recover, and give it that opportunity to actually get stronger so you can get back to where you need to be. This physical overtraining can even lead to things like a weakened immune system, frequent sicknesses, loss of appetite, loss of weight, things of that nature. So those are also really important things for you to watch out for when it comes to overtraining and the physical effects of burnout. More insidiously, burnout can have a lot of impacts negatively on our mental health. So this can look like anything from a lack of enthusiasm for the sport, as I mentioned, that feeling of being trapped by hockey, poor self-esteem in general, especially, as I said, if an athlete is tying their identity to being a hockey player, to being a goalie, as well as things like personality changes, increased anger, irritability, not being able to focus on your schoolwork or do your regular routine. And again, some of those negative mental health impacts can lead to physical symptoms. Again, that chronic fatigue, weight loss, appetite loss, that doesn't necessarily have to come from physical overtraining. It can come, like I said, from that mental stress, that cup getting too full of water. It can have a real physical manifestations if you do end up getting burnt out. An important note is that, feeling a little sore after a difficult practice or feeling down after a rough game isn't necessarily a sign of burnout, and it could just be a tough week and something that you can work through. Conversely, not all of the symptoms that I've talked about need to be present for burnout to occur. It's one of the things that's really hard with burnout is that while it's recognized as a real physical and psychological condition, there's no one-size-fits-all way of diagnosing burnout, and it really is a matter of self-evaluation and seeing when some of these physical and mental health impacts become long-term and hang over us week after week, that we need to start looking at burnout as a potential cause. In recognizing that burnout is a very real issue and something that can threaten all goalies at any age and level, there are a bunch of things that we can do to avoid or manage burnout if it occurs. From a training standpoint, I think it's really important that coaches need to ensure that practices are fun, engaging, and varied enough to avoid some of that staleness that I was talking about. I think modifications to training could also be very beneficial. Things like having recovery skates after a big tournament or after a long week of conditioning sessions. And this would just be really a way to prevent some of that physical burnout that I talked about. Specifically for goalies, I think a way to avoid that physical burnout is just by preparation and recovery. I think stretching and warming up before games and practices, which is often missed, is incredibly important. Stretching before practices is almost more important than games because when we're in a practice, we're often, being involved in these flow drills where we're getting shot after shot after shot after shot, and we're having to go up and down in our butterfly, moving back and forth all the time, and never actually getting that break of the puck leaving the zone because, the skaters are often going one after another at both ends of the ice. So I don't think a lot of goalies stretch and warm up enough before their practices, and I'd like to see more goalies bring the routine that they all bring to their games to their practices as well, with the understanding that this means that we're going to have to get to the rink a little bit earlier to make sure that we're getting that good routine in to prevent some of that extra physical stress that, again, is going to add to that cup. To that point, if you are in a practice and you're feeling really tired during a drill, there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with just stepping out of the net for a couple of reps for a bit of a breather. This is something that I tell my goalies when I'm attending team practices. I'll go up to them and say, look, if you're feeling tired right now, step out of the net for a couple seconds, reset, get a breather, maybe drink some water, and get back into the net when you're feeling fresh. Most shooters and coaches are going to rather have a fresh goalie to practice on than someone who's just standing in the net because they're too tired to do anything else. Have that confidence and have that communication with your coaches to say, look, I need a break. I need to step out of the net because we're doing Canada Cup right now and we've been doing it for the last 10 minutes and all I've been doing is going up and down in my butterfly and my legs are cooked right now. I need to get out of the net. I need a break and then I'll come back in when I'm fresh and ready to go. Lastly, on the physical side, it's really important that we get a good cool down after practices, whether that's stretching, dynamic movement, some goalies like to do yoga or roll out, anything like that, just to get some of that recovery started early before we leave the rink, and then have a good night's rest, maybe a quick meal before bed. Start that recovery process as early as possible so that we're ready to go the next time we get to the rink or to the gym or wherever we're going to be doing our training. On the mental side, one of the things that I find helps, especially during these long seasons, is to stay focused on the long-term goals. It's easy to get zoned in on short-term results, a win here, a loss here, a tie there, a bad goal against there. And with that, our emotions could be really up and down and varying with the short-term performance of ourselves and the team, which again adds a lot of stress to our life and adds a lot of stress to our cup that we then have to deal with. Try to stay focused on the long-term vision and the long-term goals of the team. This might be a push for playoffs or for championship weekends at the end of the year, or even if the team performance is not the best, you can pick one or two personal goals for long-term improvement to focus on. Something as simple as, I want to get better at tracking the puck. I want to have better rebound control by the end of the year. I want to be a faster skater. The big thing is to try and embrace the grind of a long hockey season, and it is a grind, as a fun way to work towards these long-term goals, rather than having a mindset of, okay, I got to get through practice on Tuesday and get through practice on Thursday so that I can get to the game on Saturday. And if I have a great game, then I'm going to feel really good about myself. But if I have a bad game, then, oh no, I'm going to feel really bad about hockey, really bad about myself. And I'm going to feel really bad all of next week and have this hang over me. Again, just really stay focused on those long-term goals and monitor yourself that way. If you're already feeling burned out, or if you start to feel burned out, really the only way to deal with it is to take a break. It's important to self-monitor how you're feeling and communicate with your coach about those feelings. And any good coach is going to be understanding of you and will be able to work with you on making sure that you're getting that break and getting back to 100%. Teams have APs for a reason, and in my opinion, burnout should be treated just like any other minor injury, whether goalies miss time for a sprained ankle or if they're sick. If you're feeling burned out, talk to your coach and say, look, coach, I'm not going to be able to make practice on Tuesday night. Can you find an AP to fill in for me? Because I just need some time away from the rink to heal and rest up. This is something that I think parents need to be very understanding of as well and not add any external pressure. I think especially when you get to the higher levels of hockey, AA, AAA, U15, U16 level, you get a lot of the mindset of just get out there and work through it so that you can get better because this player's doing this and this player's doing that and this goalie's going to be on the ice here. get out there, work through it, and then we can feel good about it and rest later. I think parents need to be understanding of the fact that burnout is a real condition. It's a real issue. And if we don't manage it correctly, it's just going to translate to decreased long-term performance and development. Obviously, you don't want this to be a regular thing. You don't want to be the goalie on the team that's missing every second practice. And ideally, you don't want to miss one before a big game or tournament. But if you do find that there's a bit of a lull in your schedule and you really need the break, like I said, communicate that, and any coach worth their salt is going to be able to work with you on that. Find an AP, adjust their practices to do more systems work, stuff that they don't need the goalies necessarily for, and give you that break so you can come back 100%. When you're on a break, I think it's important for you to identify the specific things that you're feeling, whether it's mental exhaustion, my legs are constantly sore, I'm not feeling good about my performance right now, and just really take the time until those specific things are dealt with. There are tons of resources, whether it's talking to teammates, therapy, talking to your parents, your coaches. There's a lot of resources out there to help you work through some of those physical and mental impacts that burnout can have. And I would say it's only when you're at or nearly at 100% in those specific things that are causing you issues that you should think about returning to play or practice. Again, treat this like a real injury, because this is a real syndrome and it has real impacts. And without dealing with them correctly, it would be like coming back to the rink with a sprained ankle that hasn't fully healed yet, but you're just going to try to work through it because you want to be out there for your team. You should feel hungry and excited each time that you come to the rink, and not filled with a sense of dread or an obligation to play hockey. Lastly, I cannot stress enough how important communication is. When coaches, parents, and teammates know how you're feeling, nobody is going to accuse you of a lack of effort or laziness. A good support network is going to work with you and get you back to 100% health and enjoyment of the sport. And when they do that, everybody benefits overall. If I were to tie everything together into one final thought, it would be that hockey is a privilege. It's something that should always be a fun activity and one that we get to participate in, rather than one that we have to participate in. So if you're feeling like playing hockey is becoming a drag, and especially if it's affecting your school life, your home life, or any part of your life away from the rink, you need to evaluate whether or not you're getting burned out. A last note on this is to not only monitor yourself, but to monitor others as well. Look out for your teammates. Check in, see how they're doing, see if they're feeling confident, if they're feeling hungry, if they feel or look energetic when they get to the rink, and talk to them about burnout. Let them know, hey, like sometimes I feel pretty sore coming to the rink too, or sometimes I don't feel so great about myself either. When you have that camaraderie and you have that team spirit, it can really help to bring everyone up, not only as a team, but individually, and prevent some of that burnout from occurring. Like I said, I think coaches need to be aware of how their training programs might be affecting kids at or away from the rink, whether it's a kid who's only playing hockey and might be tying their whole identity to the sport, or even a kid who's doing a lot of extracurriculars outside of hockey and outside of school and might need adjustments to their specific training program to prevent some of that physical fatigue from taking hold and becoming a chronic issue. For parents, I think having regular check-ins to see if your kid is still having fun and is still excited to play is a real important tool, and this can be independent of team or individual performance. Just because a team is doing really, really well and your kid is scoring a lot of goals, or for goalies is making a lot of saves and is having shutouts left, right, and center, doesn't necessarily mean that they're feeling 100% okay with either their physical or mental well-being as it relates to the sport. Conversely, a kid who's getting lit up all the time, or the team is not performing very well, might be having a blast every time that they're at the rink because, again, this is a fun sport. In my opinion, it's the best sport in the world. So I think regardless of how well your kid or your team is doing, I think it's important to have those check-ins, maybe every time you're coming back from the rink, when you're talking about the game, talking about practice, have some room in there for, hey, did you have fun today when you were at the rink? Was today a good day? How are you feeling about hockey in general? Is this still something that you're enjoying every time we show up? And if we do all of these things, if we have that parental monitoring, if coaches are making sure that their training programs are appropriate for the level of activity that these kids are having. And if these kids are properly monitoring themselves, we should be able to avoid or at least manage burnout throughout the season and improve long-term performance and development, not only at the individual level, but for the team as well. Moving on and looking ahead here, one team that I'm definitely going to be watching the goalies of is the Minnesota Wild. If you're not watching the Minnesota Wild goalies right now, you should be. They are on a heater, and they're a huge reason as to why the Wild have been able to turn things around after a slow start. They're 7-0-1 in their last 8 games, and over that stretch, they've only given up 9 goals with 4 shutouts, including back-to-back shutouts over this weekend. Jesper Wallstedt is at a .970 in his last 5 games with 3 shutouts. And Filip Gustavsson, to his credit, is .935 in 3 games with 1 shutout over that stretch. Especially for Wallstedt in his first full NHL season, he's off to an incredible start, and I'll definitely want to keep an eye on the Wild moving forward this week. On the flip side, trying to find a team that's struggling in net, the Edmonton Oilers are an obvious pick. They're last in the league in goals against, and they're obviously off to a very slow start again, similar to last season. And I think at some point something has to give. They've said that they have confidence in both Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. And to be fair, they've gone to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals with Stuart Skinner as their starting goaltender. But with Skinner at an .885 save percentage and Pickard at an .851, it's really hard to see them getting back with that level of goaltending. It is hard to find a goalie through trade this time of season, and if nothing comes up on the waiver wire, I guess the hope is that one or both of these goalies just turns it around. Stuart Skinner had a good game against Florida on Saturday, and to his credit, there were times last year, and especially in last year's playoff run, where he and Calvin Pickard were solid, but it does get late early in the NHL, and it's getting very late for Edmonton to turn things around. They still have the 2 best players in the world in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. So I think if there's any team that can make the playoffs with sub-900 goaltending, it's the Edmonton Oilers. And I think they can even make some noise in the playoffs with that. It's just, again, it's been multiple years in a row now where the goaltending has been a huge question mark for this team. And they haven't really addressed it. They've been really loyal to Stuart Skinner in particular. But like I said, I think at some point something is going to have to give here, and either he's going to have to pick up his improvement or the Oilers are just going to have to make a move. Looking at performers of the week from Dan Blackmore Goaltending, we had a number of goalies do really, really well. I got to go out to the Guelph Power Play tournament to watch a bunch of my teams playing. But for this episode, the performers of the week go to Tylen and Adam from the Waterloo Wolves U15 Double B team. They won the Stony Creek Tournament of Champions over the weekend, and in 5 games only allowed 2 goals against and had 4 shutouts, including a 1-0 win in the championship game. It's an excellent job for both Tylen and Adam, and a well-deserved reward for the hard work they've been putting in this season and last year as well. And I'm really excited for the second half of the year for them and for all of the goalies that I work with. So that is it for the inaugural episode of the Goalie Glove Box. A huge thank you if you managed to stick around this far into my ramblings. If you'd like to leave any feedback, or if you'd like to learn more about the goalie coaching services that I offer, please reach out to me, danblackmoregoaltending@gmail.com, or follow me and shoot me a DM on Instagram @danblackmoregoaltending. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next week.